Hello everyone! In our last video, we learned about two-dimensional arrays, how to store data in rows and columns, just like a table or grid. Today we are going to take arrays even further and learn about two advanced but really interesting concepts, which are jagged arrays and three-dimensional arrays. By the end of this video, you will know what a jagged array is, how to create and traverse one, and get a clear introduction to three-dimensional arrays. So, in our last video, we created two-dimensional arrays where every row had exactly the same number of columns. But what if that is not the case in real life? Think about a school where different classes have different numbers of students. For example, class 1 has 3 students, class 2 has 5 students, class 3 has 6 students. With a regular two-dimensional array, all rows must have the same size. So we would have to create a two-dimensional array large enough to fit the biggest row, wasting memory for the smaller rows. This is exactly the problem that jagged arrays solve. So let me tell you or write it. A jagged array is a multi-dimensional array where each row can have a different number of columns. So, a jagged array is a multi-dimensional array where each row can have a different number of columns. So visually it looks like this. Let me write it. For example, row first with index 0, it will look like this. 10, 20, and 30. Row number 2 with index of 1 will look like this. 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80. And row number 3 with index of 2 will look like this. 90, 11, 22, 33, 44, and 55. So row 0 or the first row has 3 elements, 1, 2, 3, and row number 2 with index of 1 has 5 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and row number 3 with index of 3 has 6 elements. Each row has its own size, and this is perfectly fine with a jagged array. So now let's create a jagged array. The key difference from a regular two-dimensional array is in how we declare it. And instead of specifying both rows and columns at once, we only specify the number of rows and leave the columns empty. Let's go. For example, we have an array with the data type integer, 2 square brackets, the name is nums equal new, and it has 3 rows but different columns. Because we have different columns, I do not write the number here. I just leave it empty. So then we assign each row its own size separately. So for example, nums, the first row has 3 elements. Let me just copy and paste it to make it a little bit faster. So we have 3 elements. For row number 2, we have 5 elements. And for row number 3, we have 6 elements. Now each row has its own independent size, exactly what we need. Now let's fill the array with values. Instead of typing values manually, let's use Math.random, a built-in Java method that generates a random decimal number between 0.0 and 1.0. By multiplying it by 10 and casting it to int, we get a random whole number between 0 and 9. So let's get started. First I write for loop. You already know how to write the for loop, so I'm not gonna go into details. I write the variable I less than nums.length I plus plus. Now let's go for the nested for loop. Int j equals 0, semicolon j is less than nums I dot length, semicolon j plus plus, and we ask please print as nums. First I write the row, then the column equals to, we are doing data casting, int, and the built-in method, which is Math.random. We will multiply it by 10 to get integer from 1 to 0 and then semicolon. So forgot to write it I is equal to 0. So notice something important here. In the inner loop we use nums I here, nums I dot length, not nums 0 dot length like we did with regular 2-dimensional arrays. This is because each row has a different size, so we must get the length of each specific row, not just the first one. Now let's traverse and print all the elements of our jagged array using a regular for loop. You already know how to write a for loop, so I'm not gonna go into details. Num.length and I plus plus. So I want to print what? I want each row go to the list, to the next line. How? By running system.out.println. Okay, each row will go to the next line. So now let's write our next for loop, which is nested for loop. Again, I will write the variable start from 0 and j will be less than nums dot length, and then I will increment the variable, and I also want the system print for me. For me, each element of array, but I don't want each element go to a different line. The element of each row I want to be in the same line, so I just remove ln. Each row prints on its own line, so with different numbers of elements. Now let me run the program. Okay, by the way, you can also do something else. Use concatenation, press plus symbol and double quote and space. Now let me run the program again. Okay, this time it's much more beautiful and organized. For the first one, we have, okay, it was only 3 values, right? 3 elements, 6, 1, and 8, and so on. So, now let's briefly talk about 3-dimensional arrays, just to satisfy your curiosity. A 3-dimensional array is simply an array of 2-dimensional arrays. If a 2-dimensional array is like a table, a 3-dimensional array is like a book of tables. Each page of the book is one 2-dimensional array. Creating a simple 3-dimensional array is like this. Okay. At the beginning, we have to start with data type because it's 3-dimensional. So I will write 3 square brackets, the name of the array, num, for example, assignment operator, new, and then again 3 square brackets, G, 3, for example, and 4, and semicolon. By the way, I have to write and here again. So this creates a 3-dimensional array with 2 here, which is the number of 2-dimensional array. 3 indicates the number of arrows. The number of rows in each 2-dimensional array, and the 4 is the number of columns in each row. So this is, if you can remember, I say 3D or 3-dimensional array is an array of 2-dimensional arrays. So how many 2-dimensional array we have? 2, and 3 row and 4 column. To initialize it with random value, we use 3 nested loops. I will do it a little bit faster to make the video a little bit shorter. For the first one, int I equal to 0, num.length, and I plus plus. For int j equals 0, semicolon, num I dot length and j plus plus. And for here we have int k equal to 0, semicolon, num I j dot length and k plus plus. So we want to print random values I, j, and k equal casting for casting views, and at the beginning then the built-in method, which is Math.random, and multiply it by 10 and then semicolon. Okay, and to traverse and print all elements, let's use for loop again. Okay, we can just copy and paste here. We will remove this part and we will just add, send that out, and for sure I will add this part. I want it be each element be print it. I will use concatenation again to make a space among elements, and again I want each row be printed in a different line, and as I don't want element of each row be in different line, I remove ON here. As you can see, each dimension adds one more level of nesting. A 2-dimension array needs 2 loops, a 3-dimensional array needs 3 loops, and so on for higher dimension. In practice, you will mostly work with 2-dimensional arrays. Anything beyond that becomes very complex and is rarely used in everyday programming. And this is Jagged and 3D or 3-dimensional arrays in Java. If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to like and subscribe the channel so you never miss a video. See you in the next one.